Today, in Draw My Life, Art Attack's Darkest Secret. Art Attack was the perfect partner to weekend breakfasts and a source of inspiration for small artists. The iconic show was initially hosted by Neil Buchanan, Rui Torres in Latin America, and Jordi Cruz in Spain. As you can see, what these three had in common was that big smile that made you feel like you were capable of anything. However, we're sorry, but we're going to have to destroy this fond memory. Hang on to your seat, because we're about to tell you what happened in Rui Torres' Hispanic Art Attack. I remembered that it always opened with the same sentence. This is the program that shows you that you don't need an expert to be a great artist. So let's attack! As many of you already know, Rui Torres tragically died in 2008 of unknown circumstances. But today's story isn't about his death, but instead of his first year as host. In 2000, Rui had to cross the Atlantic to attend the recordings in London. Neil Buchanan, the producer, the famous head, and the rest of the crew were there. The mood at the studio was pretty good. The whole staff had a great time, and overall, there was a great vibe. But one day, Rui went to the studio without knowing that the session was about to turn into a nightmare. Upon entering the set, everything was as usual, supposedly. However, the atmosphere was tense. The crew was walking back and forth in complete silence. There was no laughter, nor the familiar voices. Rui went to the makeup room and walked past the head. There was something about him that made him stop. He had seen that bust 1,000 times, but that day it looked different. He bent down a little to take a closer look. He got the sense that it was staring back at him. But it was a statue. It was so weird that Rui felt a strange feeling in his stomach. Still, he didn't think it was that big of a deal. Maybe he had spent too much time in the studio. However, things took a downturn when it was time to record. Rui went to his place and started the program as usual. But with the head's first interaction with Rui, he didn't say anything in return. At that time, the actor who had played the doll was going to the recordings. Rui stood by, waiting, but Big Head didn't answer. They cut the scene, and Neil Buchanan came over to see what the hell was going on. "Oh, nothing. Are we already recording?" They had to redo the scene. Now, the head replied, but mumbling. Neil yelled cut again and asked for more enthusiasm. Head just replied, "Yeah, sure, more enthusiasm, got it." The show carried on. It was clear that something was wrong with Head. He was as if he was out of his mind. Sighs crept in with every answer. During the break, Rui got up the courage and approached him. He asked if he was all right. Then the head opened his eyes wide and told him to mind his own business. It was obvious that something was off. Head couldn't understand because life was too unfair. All he wanted was for the day to be over. He then started shouting nonsense words. Rui looked around, but there was no one there. When the head finally calmed down, silence reigned. The team went back and the recordings continued. After a few long hours full of uncomfortable and incomprehensible moments, the day finally came to an end. They yelled cut, and Rui, without hesitating, grabbed his jacket and left. On his way out, he realized that he didn't have his keys with him, so he reluctantly had to return to the set. Rui wasn't prepared for what he was going to see next. When he arrived, he found Head on the floor. His face was all bloody, and a rope was wrapped around his neck. But blood? Of course, it wasn't the statue, it was his voice actor. Now only a death growl and foam coming out of his mouth. Rui tried to help him, but the other whispered, "Let me go. This world is a mean place. Run away before it comes for you too." At that moment, a rustling sound was heard behind the set. "Who's there?" said Rui, but no one answered. The head had a smile on his face. Rui didn't know what to do. He grabbed a scissor and went towards the sound. At that moment, the program's little music began to play. Rui looked at Head, who whispered, "Go, and don't say anything." Rui ran away without looking back. He didn't sleep at all that night. The next day when he arrived, he felt that the atmosphere was quite tense compared to the previous day. It was so strange. He arrived at the set and saw that the stage had already been cleaned up. The cleaning man was mopping the floor where Head was usually placed. This one was perched in a corner and had a big crack on his face. That day he had a frown on his face. How was that possible? Rui tried to talk to Neil, but he didn't come to the set. Everyone refused to answer his questions. That day, they changed the actor who dubbed the head. Rui stayed in the show for 1 more year and then returned to Mexico to finish his degree. And the rest is history. The most curious thing is that Jody Cruz was once asked about the sudden change of the actor for the head, and his smile wiped away. He refused to talk about it. And that was the never-aired episode of Art Attack. Before you begin commenting that this story is fake, bingo, this story isn't real. But it could be, right? Just look at the strange expression the head had. Anyway, tell us how you imagined the lost episode of Art Attack. See you at the next one!